Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into a story filled with mystery, haunting details, and a testament to the power of modern science and unwavering determination. This is the case that spanned nearly 50 years, the Sharron Prior case. Imagine a peaceful afternoon in the small neighborhood of Point St. Charles, where familiar neighbors, the laughter of children, and a serene atmosphere were part of everyday life. But everything changed completely when 16-year-old Sharron vanished mysteriously. The case not only shook the entire community, but also became one of the greatest mysteries in Canada's history. So what really happened on that fateful day? Who was the perpetrator, and how was justice finally served after nearly half a century? Let's uncover the full story together right now. Are you ready? Let's begin.
It took 48 years, but police in Longueuil say they have identified the suspect behind the murder of a 16-year-old girl. Let's go now to the CBC's Sarah Levitt, who is on the ground there. Sarah, what are police saying?
Hannah, it's quite the remarkable story here. Police saying that DNA testing has resulted in conclusive results that the murderer in this case is Franklin Romine or Romine. But to go back, because this is a long time case, it was 48 years in all, we have to go back to 1975. And that's when Sharron Prior, living in an area in Montreal called Point St. Charles, she went missing, and a few days later her body was found. She had been raped and murdered. And for decades, the family didn't have any answers as to what happened and who did it. It was in 2019 that, thanks to DNA testing reliability, the police in Longueuil got items from the crime scene tested, and it narrowed down the pool of suspects to one family in particular living in West Virginia. And what they did at that time, it was December 2022, they checked for the DNA of the brothers of this one individual that they believed was the suspect in this case because he lived in Montreal at the time. Unfortunately, he died in 1982, so they tested the DNA of the brothers, but that wasn't conclusive. So 2 weeks ago, they were in West Virginia exhuming his body, and those results are in, and they say 100% conclusive that he was the suspect in this case.
Sarah, Sharron Prior's mother and twin sisters and friends were at the news conference. Tell us about their reaction.
Well, you know, they, a few weeks ago, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were told about what was happening in West Virginia. And then earlier this week, they were told by police this news. So they did have a heads up, and they said they just felt this immense sense of relief. 48 years not knowing what happened to their sister, and now they know. Let's hear from one of the sisters.
The solving of Sharron's case will never bring Sharron back. But knowing that her killer is no longer on this earth and cannot kill anymore brings us to somewhat of a closure, this long chapter of our lives. For this, there are countless people we must thank. Friends, family, and even strangers who have given us strength with their words and support over many years.
So, you know, no doubt lots of emotion in there today. Lots of emotion for many people who knew Sharron and her family when this happened in 1975, and a big sense of relief now.
Sick information about the perpetrator. Franklin Maywood Romine, the identified perpetrator in the Sharron Prior case, serves as a quintessential example of criminals who operate in the shadows, leaving an indelible mark not only on their victims, but also on entire communities. His identification through modern DNA technology brought closure to a case that had remained unsolved for nearly half a century. Below is a detailed analysis of this perpetrator. 1. Personal background. Franklin Maywood Romine was born in 1946 in West Virginia, USA, into an unstable social and family environment. Family background. Romine grew up under economically challenging conditions, lacking education and positive guidance. These factors may have contributed to the development of a distorted mindset from a young age. Migration and life in Canada. Before committing his crime, Romine migrated to Montreal, where he lived under the radar. Moving to a new environment allowed him to conceal his past actions, creating opportunities to continue his criminal behavior. 2. Criminal behavior and psychological traits. Franklin Romine was not a random offender, but an individual with a history of continuous criminal activity and repeated acts of violence. Criminal record. Prior convictions. Romine had previous convictions for offenses involving violence, sexual assault, and battery. His record reflects a lack of behavioral control, particularly in situations involving women. Systematic behavior. Romine's prior crimes revealed a pattern of violent behavior, where he often targeted vulnerable victims. This pattern was also evident in how he approached and murdered Sharron Prior. Psychological traits. Violent tendencies. Romine exhibited signs of a violent and controlling personality. He used brutal force to achieve his aims, demonstrating a lack of empathy and disregard for human life. Skill in concealing crimes. Despite leaving evidence at the crime scene, Romine's ability to evade capture immediately after the crime indicates he was adept at concealing his identity, at least for a significant period. Sharron 3. Behavioral analysis in the Sharron Prior case. Victim selection. Sharron was a 16-year-old girl living in a peaceful community. Romine may have observed and targeted Sharron beforehand, identifying her as young and vulnerable. Crime pattern. The case illustrates Romine's escalating violent tendencies. At the scene, evidence suggests that Sharron endured severe harm and was tragically killed in a brutal manner. This aligns with the violent behavior he had demonstrated in prior incidents. Post-crime actions. Romine left several traces at the scene, including footprints, tire marks, and some of the victim's belongings. However, he fled the area immediately after committing the crime to avoid detection. Sought 4. The end of his life. Franklin Romine in 1982 at the age of 36, just 7 years after committing the crime against Sharron Prior. His death not only made it impossible to prosecute him, but also delayed the resolution of the case, as no one considered investigating him after his passing. Identifying Romine as the perpetrator through DNA analysis from his remains demonstrates that even after his death, justice could still be served, thanks to the perseverance of the victim's family and dedicated investigators. Top 5. General assessment of the perpetrator. Franklin Maywood Romine was not just an individual offender, but also a product of a social system ineffective in controlling and rehabilitating criminals. His psychological and behavioral traits reflect a person with chronic violent tendencies and a lack of self-restraint, a criminal capable of concealing his crimes but not skilled enough to evade justice indefinitely. The identification of Romine as the perpetrator highlights the power of modern technology and the perseverance required in the fight against crime, even if it took nearly 50 years for justice to prevail. Context and developments. The Sharron Prior case is not only the story of a heinous crime, but also a reflection of the stark contrast between the peaceful life of a quiet neighborhood and the darkness brought by the perpetrator. The context of the case plays a crucial role in shedding light on how the perpetrator approached and committed the crime, as well as the profound impact it had on the community. 1. Location of the crime. Where Sharron lived with her family was a modest working-class area in Montreal, known for its tranquility and close-knit community. The area had no history of severe crimes, making Sharron's death both unexpected and deeply shocking to local residents. Sharron's body was discovered in a remote wooded area in Longueuil, not far from her home. The location of the crime scene indicates that the perpetrator deliberately chose an isolated spot to carry out the act, minimizing the risk of being caught. Evidence at the scene, such as footprints, tire tracks, and signs of violence, suggests that Sharron was held captive and subjected to harm before being killed. 2. Sharron Prior's life before the crime. Sharron was an energetic girl with a love for sports and a passion for creativity. She dreamed of becoming a veterinarian and often cared for abandoned animals. She actively participated in community activities and was beloved by those around her for her kindness and compassion. On March 29, 1975, Sharron left her home around 7 p.m. to meet friends at a nearby pizza parlor, a familiar gathering spot for her and other local youths. She never made it to her destination. This was the last time she was seen alive. 3. The perpetrator's behavior in context. Sharron was likely being watched beforehand. Walking alone in the evening made her a vulnerable target. The perpetrator may have been familiar with the area and knew that Sharron frequently passed through it. Sharron was abducted while on her way, indicating that the perpetrator acted swiftly and with careful planning. Her captivity before her murder suggests the perpetrator was not solely intent on attacking her, but sought to inflict prolonged physical and emotional harm. The secluded wooded area in Longueuil, chosen as the crime scene, reflects the perpetrator's desire to commit the act far from prying eyes. Evidence at the scene indicates that Sharron fought back in an attempt to escape, but was overpowered by the perpetrator's superior strength. 4. Community reaction. The brutal murder of a young girl in such a peaceful area left the community in shock and fear. Local residents not only mourned Sharron's loss, but also became deeply concerned about their own safety. Immediately after Sharron's disappearance, hundreds of volunteers joined the search efforts, combing through streets, parks, and remote areas in hopes of finding her. These efforts demonstrated the community's solidarity, but also underscored a sense of helplessness as the perpetrator remained at large. 5. Unusual aspects of the context. Sharron disappeared in the evening, a time when there were fewer people around. This was an ideal opportunity for the perpetrator to act without being noticed. However, the attack occurred close to her home, suggesting that the perpetrator might have been familiar with the area and had premeditated the act. Around the same time and in the same area, another woman was attacked by a man with a knife, but managed to escape thanks to the intervention of a passerby. This initially led to the theory that the two incidents might have been connected to the same individual. 6. The impact of the context on the case. In the 1970s, criminal investigation technology was limited, making it nearly impossible to analyze evidence such as fingerprints or DNA. Gaps in evidence preservation systems and criminal databases further stalled the case, leading to a swift deadlock. The case left a lasting shadow over the Pointe Saint Charles community, as residents not only mourned the loss of a talented young girl, but also grappled with an enduring sense of insecurity. The context of the Sharron Prior case reflects an environment that appeared safe, but concealed unforeseen dangers. Factors such as the perpetrator's choice of location, timing, and method of execution demonstrate careful planning to exploit vulnerabilities in the community's sense of security. This serves as a reminder of the importance of raising crime prevention awareness and improving investigative systems to better protect society's most vulnerable members. V. Investigation and legal proceedings. The investigation into the Sharron Prior case lasted nearly 50 years, highlighting the difficulties in solving crimes during a time when modern forensic technology was unavailable. Despite the police's efforts from the outset, limitations in technical tools, the loss of evidence, and the passage of time caused the case to remain at a standstill for decades. A breakthrough finally occurred in 2023 when advanced DNA technology identified the perpetrator, closing one of the longest-running cases in Canadian history.
In Quebec today, 48 years after a 16-year-old girl was raped and murdered, police have identified her killer. Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin now on the cold case solved by science.
Yeah, I received a phone call.
For nearly half a century, the fight of Yvonne Prior's life was to discover who raped and killed her 16-year-old daughter, Sharron, in March of 1975. Now investigators have finally solved the case.
The profile from the bones
Yeah.
is a full match with the one from the crime scene that belongs to the murderer. So it's in.
This bilingual documentary by news program Nouveau Info tracked how police in Longueuil, just outside Montreal, closed this cold case, one of the most notorious in Quebec history. Sharron, a loving, popular, and smart teen, was walking to a pizza restaurant a few blocks from her home when she came across a stranger, her killer. Franklin Mayhood Romine was an American, then 28 years old, living in Montreal. A violent man with a long list of criminal convictions, not identified among the more than 120 suspects police investigated.
He was always playing hide and seek with law enforcement. He was going back and forth to the US.
That, until new advances in forensic biology and genetic genealogy led investigators to rebuild his family tree.
1. Initial investigation phase, 1975 to 1977. As soon as Sharron's body was discovered in the Longueuil area, police launched an extensive investigation. Evidence collected at the scene included footprints and tire tracks, indicating the perpetrator used a vehicle to transport the victim to the crime scene. Personal items. Some of Sharron's belongings, including her clothes, were found scattered near the site. Receipt for a special jacket. Sharron had been eagerly awaiting. This was a poignant detail, but also helped establish the timeline of the crime. Police interviewed over 100 suspects, including individuals living near the area where Sharron went missing, and those with prior convictions related to violence. Several witnesses reported seeing a suspicious man, but provided only vague descriptions, leaving investigators without clear leads. Despite deploying significant resources, the police were unable to gather sufficient evidence to identify the perpetrator. The case fell into a state of stagnation within a few years of Sharron's murder. 2. Prolonged stalemate period, 1978 to 2019. A significant obstacle in the case was the loss of critical physical evidence in 1995, as items collected from the crime scene were not properly preserved. Only a limited amount of evidence remained, including Sharron's clothing and a blood-stained shirt believed to belong to the perpetrator. During the 1970s and 1980s, forensic technology was not advanced enough to analyze DNA or extract meaningful clues from small traces of evidence, leaving investigators unable to fully utilize what they had. Criminal databases at the time were rudimentary and insufficient for linking suspects to the case. Sharron Prior's mother dedicated her life to keeping the case in the public eye and urging law enforcement not to abandon the investigation. She appeared on television, organized public appeals for justice, and consistently pressed the police to continue their efforts. 3. Breakthrough with DNA technology, 2020 to 2023. In 2022, forensic scientists used advanced DNA technology to analyze the blood sample on the shirt found at the crime scene. The analysis identified the DNA profile of Franklin Maywood Romine, a suspect who had never been investigated before. The use of genetic technology and global DNA comparison systems helped break a decades-long stalemate. In May 2023, Romine's body was exhumed for DNA comparison. The results confirmed that Romine was the perpetrator in the Sharron Prior case. This verification put an end to nearly half a century of debate and lingering doubts. 4. Case closure and legal impact. The case was officially closed in 2023, even though the perpetrator had died in 1982. Sharron's family finally received answers, bringing them a measure of peace after years of waiting. This case stands as evidence that no crime can escape the pursuit of justice, no matter how much time has passed. It underscores the critical importance of preserving evidence and leveraging new technologies in criminal investigations. The case also highlights the need for periodic reviews of unsolved cases, especially in light of advancements in forensic science. 5. General assessment of the investigation and legal process. Limitations of the early era. The investigation in the 1970s was hampered by outdated technology, shortcomings in evidence management, and constraints within the legal system. Power of modern technology. Advances in DNA analysis demonstrated that even decades-old cases could be solved when the right scientific methods are applied. Family's perseverance. Sharron's family became a driving force, motivating law enforcement and investigators to persist with the case despite the passage of time and significant challenges.
The solving of Sharron's case will never bring Sharron back. But knowing that her killer is no longer on this earth and cannot kill anymore brings us to somewhat of a closure this long chapter of our lives. For this, there are countless people we must thank. Friends, family, and even strangers who have given us strength with their words and support over many years.
So, no doubt lots of emotion in there today. Lots of emotion for many people who knew Sharron and her family when this happened in 1975, and a big sense of relief now.
Impact and lessons learned. 1. Social impact. The case heightened community awareness of the risks of crime, even in seemingly safe areas. Sharron's family found peace after enduring decades of grief and loss. 2. The role of forensic technology. DNA analysis played a pivotal role in solving the case, underscoring the importance of long-term evidence storage and preservation. Had this technology been developed earlier, the case might have been resolved much sooner. 3. Lessons on management and investigation. The loss of evidence during the investigation highlights the need for improved protocols in evidence preservation. The legal system must ensure periodic reviews of unsolved cases to leverage scientific advancements effectively. And so, we've journeyed through the entire timeline, from Sharron Prior's fateful disappearance to the moment justice was finally served nearly 50 years later. This case, filled with pain and haunting memories, is also a clear testament that no crime can escape the light of truth. This story isn't just about identifying the perpetrator. It's a lesson in perseverance, the strength of a victim's family, and the remarkable advancements in forensic technology. One key takeaway is this: no matter how much time passes, justice endures and will ultimately prevail. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories like this. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective on this case. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video on our channel.